You should actually be going. Welcome to another episode of Brit and Boer. Hopefully this one, unlike the previous one, will be the whole episode. The previous one was actually an hour and 50 minutes long. We uploaded only 43 minutes, but because we don't have time and we just don't care, we didn't fix it. So we're sorry about that. It's not you, it's us. John!
Jansie,
What?
how nice to see you.
It's so good to see you again. I mean,
Thank you very much.
I start these episodes of Brit and Boer never knowing who the other person will be. And so far it's been you every time.
Yeah.
And I can't, I'm happy. It makes me non-stop happy. I am just facing happiness. I'm sorry. Any case. Right. Today's topic, John. This is a doozy. This is a big one. Let's call it misplaced compassion. Misplaced compassion.
Yeah.
So before we start that, let's just define again for ourselves and for our single viewer what compassion means. It is a heartfelt. I've forgotten already. I want to get this from the dictionary. So I memorized this. I'm not looking at my phone at all. Sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. Okay, so you have a sympathy for other people's distress, and you have a desire to alleviate that distress. That's compassion. That's the dictionary definition of compassion.
Okay.
The other thing I want to say as well is that we serve a God who is compassionate. Now, I have heard the foolish argument that the God of the New Testament is different from the God of the Old Testament. I hope no theologian out there makes that sort of stupid argument, but I've heard this literally from a person's mouth, not once.
A Christian.
Yeah, this is the one I heard with my own ears directly. Was at a coffee shop. I heard two guys walking out, and the one guy was literally saying to the other guy, well, we don't want in this case, what would you rather have, the God of the Old Testament or the God of the New Testament? And immediately I could figure out these are obviously talking about wrath versus compassion. Right, this is usually what these oaks are saying is the God of the Old Testament is one of wrath, and the God of the New Testament is a God of love or wrath. But if you have a quick glance at the Old Testament, there's plenty of scripture that speaks of God's compassion, His love. Isaiah is filled with that. Isaiah 49:15 comes to mind. It speaks of a woman's child who sucks. Right, so even if your child sucks, there's compassion.
Yeah.
I might be getting that verse slightly wrong, but Isaiah 49 verse 50. God's compassion is far-reaching and beautiful, and it's always been there. It's always been since the beginning. So we need to just lay that on the lino, as the two Ronnies would say. And but now the question is, is there a thing such as misplaced compassion in our day and age?
That's a very interesting question. That would take much more time.
Shall I hold your beer while you climb into this one?
So I think we should maybe look at examples of where compassion is expected as the norm, and then look at typical, let's say, modern behaviors in terms of how that compassion is expressed, and then assess the degree to which that application of compassion is genuinely helpful or potentially harmful. Yeah. The obvious one is a mother with a child. Yeah.
Even if a child sucks.
Yeah, exactly. So...
Because some children suck only when they're tiny.
Yes.
They suck at the teat.
Like mine. my child used to suck, but not anymore.
Yeah, but some children grow up and they stop sucking.
Yeah, yeah,
They become useful.
yeah. That's right.
That person over there that guy sucks, man.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but he's only 3 months old. What do you expect? Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, that guy sucks, man. Mm-hmm. He's 21. He probably needs to get his act together.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, my son sucked until he was a year old and then pretty much...
Stop sucking.
Yeah, that's it.
Must have made a million friends just at that that very moment he stopped sucking.
Yeah, yeah.
The social impact of not sucking is tremendous.
Yeah.
Okay, any case, yeah.
And so when you look at how modern mothers treat their children as a consequence of their compassion towards their children, and you compare the outcome of that treatment with, let's say, former generations, to make the distinction clearer, let's just go back to the earliest typical behaviors in modern memory, which would, let's say, probably be our grandparents' generation. I don't know quite what they call them in terms of boomers or the other.
Generation what?
Yeah.
I don't even know anymore. There's so many generations now.
Yeah. So
it's worse than the alphabet people.
So like my grandparents were born, I don't know, around about the 1910s, 1920s, I think. Do you know when yours were? Yeah,
that sounds about accurate, yeah.
Okay.
No, my granddad was about 8. Yeah, it's about, wow. 1900 somewhere, yeah.
Yeah.
They would have had a good experience of the Second World War. They would have been young-ish people.
I remember my grandfather telling me about how he fought in the Second World War. Yeah. So let's take that as roughly 100 years ago. You know, what people were going through 100 years ago versus now. So so they would have been young parents about 100 years ago. So give or take 10, 20 years compared to now. And I spent a lot of time actually with my grandfather particularly. And there was an entirely different attitude towards how children were supposed to be raised back then compared to today. And I don't say that everything they did was necessarily advantageous or correct. Arguably, you could say things were even more draconian than could be argued to be advantageous in this day and age. Like, for example, my mother was sent to boarding school when she was quite young, without much involvement in the discussion. So it wasn't a case of, well, we think, although it's going to be a little upsetting for you to be away from your parents, we think it's going to be good for you. It's going to be character building. It's going to give you the best opportunities. There wasn't really much discussion. It just happened because that's what everybody in their particular class, like naval officers and their wives, did to their children, sent them off to boarding school. And I know my mother suffered as a consequence of not understanding why she was sent off to boarding school. Whereas in retrospect, knowing what she subsequently came to learn about the attitude of her father towards her, she would have probably respected it, but there wasn't that kind of conversation.
I just want to break in there and say, I really love your mother.
Oh, thank you.
I love my mother very much, but your mother really is fantastic.
Thank you.
And I think this is a great time to tell the people out there what she does. Because I can't remember the website's name.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So if you just Google Tweed Crafts.
She makes these cute little tweed thingies.
Yeah. Because she wanted to be active in her retirement. Yeah. Because I think if you stop doing things, you, what's the word?
You start sucking.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Who wants to suck?
No.
Nobody wants to suck.
So she wants to stay active, and she's very industrious. Obviously, she's not doing it with big profit as her primary motivator. It's more a case of just staying active and doing what she enjoys. But she's
a phenomenal lady. Yeah.
So So anyway, if we take 100 years ago and we think about the mistakes they made and what was the product of that kind of genre of child rearing, and then we look at the output today, in my opinion, there's incontrovertible evidence that the net effect of the 100 years ago mentality is vastly superior to today. And this
even though it's more harsh.
Yeah, and this is the thing. You see, nowadays we are taught, when I say we, let's just confine that to modern Western people.
Society, modern Western,
Yeah, we are taught that it's not good to be harsh with your children. And that
spanking is tantamount to pretty much murdering them.
Yes.
Killing the poor little
things. It's legally now defined as abuse in the United Kingdom. Historically, we had the defence of reasonable chastisement. But the point at which it had to become a defence was already a problem, because you shouldn't have to defend yourself if discipline, physical discipline, is accepted as being correct. And so then that defence was eroded by definitions of what qualified as reasonable chastisement. And actually, right now in the United Kingdom, we've got remarkably racist laws. So the situation at the moment is, let's imagine you are an old-fashioned person that takes the Bible at face value, and you want to raise your children in what Christians call the fear and admonition of the Lord. And so you look at instructions wherever you can find them throughout the scriptures, both Old and New Testament. Old Testament primarily is obviously Proverbs, but in New Testament there are so many references to physical discipline, and it actually relates God's discipline of Christians to the discipline that parents exert on their children. So we know it's not something that was phased out in the church, depending on how you define the church. I'm not a dispensationalist, so I think the church has existed since the Garden of Eden. So if you take the Bible at face value and you use traditional forms of chastisement, of discipline, physical punishment, corporal punishment, and you do it in a way that would be effective historically, you will be prosecuted if the authorities are alerted to the fact.
But it's okay to rape young girls.
Well, sorry, if you're white, you'll be prosecuted.
Oh, yeah.
Now, why do I say if you're white? Because the way reasonable chastisement is expressed in law in the United Kingdom is that any corporal punishment, any physical form of punishment that leaves a mark can be prosecuted. And obviously, if you have pigmented skin, it's substantially less likely that you will leave a visible mark. So there's an enormous kind of inequality in the law as things stand. So if you're white, you can't really risk using any corporal punishment on your child.
What you can do is maybe spray tan your child before you give him a good spanking.
I wonder.
Or paint him blue and say he's Indian.
Yes. Well, you see, I think it would have to come from his side. So I think you would need to, because,
consent.
Yeah, that's
my
right,
body,
yes.
my choice.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So if he feels more affinity with another race and feels that he needs to be physically altered to better kind of outwardly express his affinity with that race that he prefers to identify with, then I think it could be quite safe. So if you could psychologically manipulate your child from a very early age into identifying with a race that has as dark a pigment as possible, the chances are the outcome of your child rearing would be superior if the proposition is correct that 100 years ago, the way they raised children produced
better humans.
Better humans, yeah. Obviously, I'm being facetious, and I've got to say that because throughout my life it's evidently not been apparent, and it's caused a bit of a stir when I've said things facetiously that were not recognised as being facetious.
Yeah. Oh my word.
And it didn't just begin with, a playful remark that found its way into 40 newspapers. Even at school, my teachers never realised I was being facetious. So sadly, it's like you have to write sarcastic in brackets, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So just for our one viewer, John is sometimes very often facetious. So just grow a tough skin.
Yeah. But I'm going back to the point that parents today are taught by the powers that be that it is ignorant, I think, and outdated to inflict any physical punishment on a child.
Yeah, and I've heard some sophisticated arguments around that.
Oh, yes.
People get very... they treat people who want to spank their kids as if they're from the Stone Age, as if it's the weirdest thing. If it's out of the Dark Ages, we're not there anymore. How can you be so barbaric? You know?
Yes.
It's you're an absolute... I mean, you're a monkey. You're a you're a cave-dwelling monkey if you want to spank you. How dare you? We're way past that. I've heard some really interesting, some clever people say that sort of thing,
Okay, so do you think you could fairly, without misrepresenting them, summarize their arguments?
The best I could come up with is it's positive reinforcement is far better than negative reinforcement. That's the best I heard. It was kind of like psychologically, and that in itself is a discussion on its own. I would probably call the episode the damage modern psychology has done to humankind. And I think we should have an episode like that.
Yeah.
I'm not being facetious. I really think modern psychology has messed up a lot of people. But that aside, if you're a psychologist, and I have family members who practice psychology, and so they're lovely people, but I think their field is dangerous, to be honest. But in any case, so they would say positive reinforcement, for instance.
Okay.
If you positively reinforce a child instead of wanting to spank him, that's a negative way to handle the situation. You've got to be positive about it.
And I'm not being rhetorical, but just genuinely to understand their position better. If the child is already engaged in a self-destructive course of behavior, how do you positively reinforce the opposite behavior?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm on your side, so I wouldn't be able to make a case for their side.
Okay. Well, let's try.
Okay.
All right. So, shall I give a scenario?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So you go shopping with a child in a supermarket, and the child wants something that it can't have. Maybe because the thing is unhealthy, as you deem it as a parent, or it's expensive, or it's just destructive to a child to allow them to acquire the habit of wanting to acquire things that they simply don't need. And so you say to them, okay, little Jimmy, now you're late for your next appointment and whatever, you're rushing around the shop.
Why is it always little Jimmy? I mean, surely Jimmy, I mean, the poor little dude's gonna grow up with some serious issues because he's always he always gets
and it's a bit racist as well. What's a nice Afrikaans name?
Afrikaans?
Yeah.
Jannie.
Jannie. Okay.
Jannie.
All right. Okay, little Jannie.
Okay, clean Jannie.
Yes. So, and then you've got to give that child a little speech, a psychologically sophisticated speech that can resonate with, I don't know, a 5-year-old or something like that. So then you're shopping, you're late for your next appointment, but then little Jannie wants, I don't know, some chocolate bar or something. So you've now got to get down on one knee, look him in the eye, hold his hands, stroke his head and say, okay, little Jannie, now the thing is. And now you've got to convince him of your worldview with respect to the relative merits of having what you want and making your will known and being assertive and confident and all that kind of thing, versus submitting and allowing somebody vertically superior in the hierarchy to impose their will on you. Now, that's a highly complex debate that I think we ourselves could debate for, if we had enough kind of coffee and food, we could probably debate that for a good 12 to 16 hours. Okay, you've got to summarize the relative merits of opposing positions within that debate and present them to a 5-year-old in a way that resonates with his psychology, which I find extraordinarily challenging. Yeah. So it seems to me like,
especially some of these kids. I mean, I speak of myself. I know I know what I was.
Yeah.
I sucked long after I was off my mom's teat.
Yeah.
I sucked big time, and I needed discipline.
Yeah.
No positive reinforcement would have helped with me. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
So now you think, okay, I wish I had time to give this little child that I love from the bottom of my heart, that I'd be willing to lay down my life for genuinely, to give him a really nice speech at his level that was fair and balanced, summarized both arguments, and presented to him the opportunity to choose the argument which he genuinely agreed had the superior merit. And you would love to be able to do that, but you're very late for your next appointment. And so you simply say to him, sorry, Jimmy, but you can't have that chocolate bar now. Okay, what does Jimmy do now? Jimmy then...
Yanni.
Sorry, Yanni. So Yanni...
Sorry to all Jimmys out there.
Yeah. So Yanni now lies on the floor and he kicks his legs up and down and he starts
with
screaming.
Fallies. He's wearing Fallies and two-tone clothes.
Oh, yes.
He's a proper Boer.
Yeah. So I don't know even why he needs the Fallies.
He's a Boer.
British people are shoes, because Afrikaners don't need shoes.
Yeah, no, but just humor me on this.
All right, okay.
He's wearing Fallies. It's very in vogue right now.
Oh, right, okay. My son even has some. Yeah, okay. My wife even has some. But anyway.
She's Namibian.
Yeah. So anyway, little Yanni is lying down on the floor and he's having what in the old days we would call a tantrum. But nowadays he's just expressing himself.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just
it's like almost like art.
Yeah, because he hasn't yet been educated.
Yeah.
So he can't really kind of summarize the extent of his negative emotional response to this unwelcome news that he's not permitted to have the chocolate. And he has a far more time-efficient way of getting what he needs than presenting a lecture to his mother. So he lies on the floor and he makes a kind of a violent outburst to express the extent of his displeasure with the information that you've just imparted to him. And so he's there shouting, and he knows if he shouts loudly, he will embarrass you, and other people around you are going to give you unwanted attention that he's already identified in terms of how you responded to peer pressure in the past is highly effective. And so, but now, you can't, because it would be immoral now, even within the context of your modern paradigm, to say, okay, Jimmy, okay, Yanni, here we go, you have the chocolate, but we'll talk about this later, okay? And give him the chocolate. Because now you've just taught him that violence gets you what you want, because he's made a violent response to your information. He might have even thrown something on the ground, or grabbed the phone out of your hand and thrown that on the ground because he knows you care so much about your phone. And so you can't possibly reward his violent behavior by giving him the chocolate bar. So now you have to positively reinforce the good behavior, which he's not currently emotionally disposed to want to engage in. So the job that you had before he initiated the tantrum is now probably about 1,000% harder, because you've got to now transition his emotional state from being kind of angry and aggressive towards being passive and calm and receptive, which I think anyone with an IQ of less than about, let's say, 145 would find immensely challenging to perform successfly. So I don't deny that it is indeed possible.
John, and you have an IQ of 342.3, so the rest of us are left out, in other words. So it's...
Well, you see, the thing about this positive reinforcement is that I'm sure these super clever people that write these wonderful books are capable of doing it on their own children, if they decide to have children. I think often they don't.
The keyboard warriors, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is, for the overwhelming majority of us
suckers,
cretins,
yeah.
I don't think it's realistic that we would ever be capable of being trained to implement this methodology, because the level of psychological sophistication necessary to achieve an effective outcome is such that most of us would persistently fail and produce reprobates and delinquents that end up depressed and misunderstood and maybe suicidal and on Ritalin and SSRIs or alcoholics or taking illicit drugs. Do you see what I mean? So I think you will find that even if these people are right, nonetheless, we as common humanity, with that lack of psychological sophistication, will find ourselves failing to the extent that society will reflect that failure by increase in dependency on drugs. Because of course,
because that's the success rate, right? Obviously,
Yes.
it's working.
Yeah.
Why? Because freaking the whole world is drugged up. All these children who weren't taught discipline, they are drugged up.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
these oaks are they claiming that this
Yes.
sort of positive affirmation type thing works, but take away the Ritalin,
yes,
take away all of the other drugs.
Yeah.
What's left? Then you're leveling the playing ground.
yeah,
Now he's saying, no, you're cheating now. You the bodybuilder with a pumped up fluid. Well, I can't use that because all bodybuilders seem to be pumped up on steroids. You the Lance Armstrong, right? You the guy claiming victories.
Yes.
Was it 6 times in a row? Meanwhile, all this time you were clapping
performance enhancing drugs.
special chocolates,
Yeah.
special milkshakes, and whatever,
Yeah,
blood milkshakes, and so you can't claim victory.
no,
You can't claim your methodology works because your subjects are zombies.
yeah,
They're zombified.
yeah. And so if we contrast that, and the thing is, I'm not trying to make an aggressive argument against parents who don't like the idea of using physical punishment, because I think most nice people don't like the idea of using physical punishment. I don't like it. Do you know?
Yeah, you don't do it because it's nice.
No. From the perspective of a Christian that takes the Bible at face value, you do it because you perceive that you're commanded to. And this is, I think...
But it's more than that. It's the command, but it's also because we know it's good for the child.
I'll tell you the problem with that argument is that if you subject your obedience to your comprehension, then only intelligent people that are capable of understanding the intellectual merits of commands are asked to be obedient. And relatively ungifted people intellectually then are permitted to disobey. And the less intellectually gifted you are, the greater the necessity there is to obey. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I don't even ask for understanding comprehension. I once had to let an employee go who was very intelligent. I would say he was an undiagnosed autist. He could focus on one task that I had no capability to solve. all day long without distraction and eventually get there and solve it, motivated the whole time by the excitement of getting the solution. And on one occasion, I had to let him go. And I was abroad with him. So he was thousands of miles from home on a project for me. And I asked him to do something, and he refused to do it. And I thanked him for his service. He had worked for me for years. And I said, okay, well, we need to organize for you to return home. I was very friendly towards him, but he was utterly shocked. And he asked, why? What have I done wrong? And I said, you've just disobeyed a lawful request, instruction, command, however you want to interpret it. And he was a former policeman. Actually, he was responsible for maintaining that country's national equivalent of the red list, Interpol's red list, looking for, because he enjoyed solving complex problems, like finding people that other people couldn't find. And so he understood the chain of command and all that kind of thing. And then I explained to him that he was not useful to me if he could only obey commands that he understood the logical merits of. Because that limited me to using him only in ways that he was capable of appreciating the value of.
Which means you'd have to ask every time, do you see a value in this?
That's right.
So it just kind of becomes a bit of a headache to you.
That's right. And the extent to which my operations progress in the sphere for which he was responsible in progressing it would be limited to his capabilities rather than a team's capabilities or my capabilities. And if he understood the big picture to the extent that I did, he was responsible for actually composing that vision, we would be in each other's roles. Do you see what I mean? And so he then understood the logic of what I was explaining and apologized, and I instantly continued hiring him for quite a long time after that. But the point I make is that we need to, provided you acknowledge the legitimacy of the source of the command, you need to agree to obey the command whether or not you understand it. Often, if I give an instruction, let's say we don't have much time, so I don't have time to be gentle and calm and slow and reasonable and relatable. Sometimes you've got to just issue a command, almost like as a kind of barked order, which is regrettable, but sometimes necessary. And sometimes people ask why. And so I used to have a kind of a color code for my commands. And if I gave a red command, that meant please don't waste your time or my time asking for the rationale. Please just do it, and we can discuss the rationale later, And what I found is that in most cases, if you issue a code red, we used to call it a code red command, and the person knows, okay, this is code red, you don't ask any questions, you just get it done. During the process of them actually executing the command, they would come to understand the rationale for that command and invariably have no questions at the end of the mission, if you like. And I think the same is true with God's commands to Christians. If you do whatever you're told to do, whether you understand it or not, eventually you grow to understand the wisdom, the logic, the merits of that command. So I know it's a bit of a long parenthesis, but I think it's necessary to qualify why.
Yeah.
Because people on the other side often think that Christians are voluntarily stupid. We willingly negate our own logical faculties in order to believe in some utter nonsense.
What do they call it? Spaghetti monster? Right?
Yes, exactly. And so I think, I would like to respond to that accusation as guilty as charged, but I think there's a superior logic that compels that position. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, at least we're honest about it. Those oaks, the atheist lives by the same rules we do, and they acknowledge the same rules we do. They just don't want to be honest about where it's from.
Yeah.
So I think they steal our worldview in that sense. I think they steal the worldview that that we all have to live by in order to have a civilized society. But I think at least the Christian is honest about it.
Yeah. So I wonder whether now, because we've looked at the most prominent, obvious example of the execution of the emotion of compassion, if you can call it that.
Jannie.
Yeah, with a mother and child. I think now we can kind of move on to a couple of things. And one is, which is a little bit of a parenthesis, but I think it's a very important one. One is, what is the analogical consequence of a wrong understanding of how compassion should be worked out?
First want to take it elsewhere, if you don't mind.
Okay, certainly.
Another example.
Okay, yeah.
And this is controversial. But looking at, say, for instance, the LGBTQ movement. Pete Hegseth was in a little bit of an argument a few weeks ago, probably a few months ago now.
Is that the defense minister in the United States?
The United States defense minister.
Yeah.
Some woman got emotional about some dude in the army or somewhere who identified as a woman.
Okay.
And Hegseth was perplexed by this. He said, "What? Oh, you're talking about men who think they're women? Yeah, that's a psychological risk." So he was very pragmatic about it.
So I'm sorry. Was she upset that
That
a
Pete
man
Hegseth-
thought he was a woman? I mean,
Pete Hegseth didn't want to.
correct expression.
He wants these people out of the army
Yes,
who
yeah.
don't know what they are.
Okay.
He doesn't want them fighting on the front lines, it seems.
And so did she think he was wrong?
He was unreasonable
Oh, okay.
because he doesn't know what a woman is.
Right.
And he said, "Look, we have the data."
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing. Pete, I'm really
Yes.
sorry if I mess up your story. WhatsApp me if it's a problem.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a very recent example. So what are we looking at? We're looking at misplaced compassion, right?
Yes.
So in this case, this woman, I mean, it almost looks like she wanted to break out into tears. She has compassion, right?
Yes, yeah.
She has emotional distress for this guy's distress, right? Which seems good.
Yeah.
But now the problem is Pete Hegseth has compassion on other people.
Yes.
He has compassion on, because he says this person's emotional state is not in a good place, right?
Yeah.
This person, we can't trust them to make the correct calls. So his compassion is in a different place.
Yes.
So whose compassion here is misplaced? You see what I'm saying? If you have compassion towards this guy who says he's a lady, and they make the wrong call and they cause the death of other people,
Yes.
who had the wrong compassion here?
Yeah. And in fact, it may not even be the death of other people. What I've noticed, so for example, I've got a very good friend who comes from quite a traditional background, believes in discipline and hard work and that kind of thing, and has a child that I think got quite a good degree from Oxford University in the United Kingdom. And
For those who don't know, Oxford is a really cool university. You've got to be very clever.
yeah, and this person, like within a couple of years of graduating from Oxford, then decided that the gender, again, I don't know the difference between sex and gender, so just please imagine you're talking to an old man. So the gender that they were born with was for some reason not their correct gender. And the thing is, there were no evidences of any psychological disturbance. The marriage, I think, didn't work out in the end, but which is, of course, always upsetting to a child. But it wasn't anything substantially different to a normal modern person's life experience. And this is a highly intelligent person, very good looking, good physical condition, doing sport, all that kind of thing. And they suddenly shocked the parent by telling the parent that they want to change their gender. And so then they went to some healthcare professional who gave them some kinds of drugs that would change their, what do you call it, the hormonal composition.
Composition,
Yeah. And the mother, who's very intelligent, did some research, but she didn't interfere with the will of the child, because it's not a child anymore. The person's like in the early 20s. But she was telling me that according to her research, people who start taking these drugs have substantially reduced longevity statistically. Now, I don't know if her research were accurate, but she's a careful lady, very intelligent, and has absolutely no interest in politics. So I think that's worth looking at. But I think it may be true that when you really severely reconfigure your hormones, it doesn't equate to a very, a very long longevity.
Throw into the mix, it seems to also shorten the lives of other people if you look at the shootings in the US. Yeah. So you're taking those hormonal imbalance things seems to shorten other people's lives.
I think the problem you have with that argument is that for as many people who have been psychologically damaged by some experience in their past that's worked itself out in a school shooting or something like that, you will find evidence, at least in terms of the information that we receive, whether or not it's reliable, of people who come from good families, like Christian homes, who then become school shooters.
Perform the same atrocities.
Yeah. So I think one has to be careful in not being selective in terms of which evidence we want to look at.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have cognitive bias, But I think just looking at the mechanics of what happens to a person when they are respected, some might say indulged in their desire to drastically change things about themselves physically in response to an emotional need. Let's say you appease that emotional need and you've been kind to the person, you've been compassionate. But look at the consequences. If it's true that your life is shortened, you now are helping that person end their life early and damaging their body in obvious ways. And what I'm really saying is that one act of compassion that may be genuinely motivated actually can create a level of harm that substantially outweighs the good you have done through your compassion. Going back to little Jannie on the floor, you feel sorry for the guy. He just wants a chocolate bar. It's not complicated. He's not trying to ruin the moral fabric of his country. He just wants a chocolate bar. So you say, okay, here we are. I'm going to be kind to you and appease your negative emotion by giving you a chocolate bar. Then you'll stand up, stop crying, smile at me, eat your chocolate bar.
Everybody's going to be happy.
You've done something kind. But now what happens when little Jannie grows up with these tendencies left unchecked and he gets married?
Yeah, he'll be throwing a tantrum in the Isle of Checkers for a chocolate bar at the age of 21, 22.
And the problem is, it could
slightly different, but still the same.
That's right. And so now,
far more dangerous, maybe.
Yeah, if this violent behavior, which is not so harmful to other people at the age of 5, continues as he increases his intelligence and his ability to leverage objects in his environment. Those objects could be a weapon, could be a vehicle, do you know?
That's exactly what's happening. They are throwing tantrums in the aisles at Checkers. I mean, look at the 2020 riots and look at all these.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of babies. The only difference is they've grown older.
Yeah.
They've grown older.
That's right. And so you'll find like middle-aged ladies whose tantrums were never checked as children, who are now throwing tantrums with vehicles and kind of running people over because their pride is agitated and they haven't learnt the necessity to submit to lawful authority. And so if they're contradicted by, say, a law enforcement officer and they want to have an angry tantrum, they're not going to get out of their vehicle, lie on the ground and kick their legs up and down and beat the road with their fists. They're going to use their car aggressively to run over a law enforcement officer, for example, you know, or somebody is going to use a weapon to do something that is essentially just a childish tantrum that's never been disciplined out of them. Yeah. And so all of that damage, even if you don't consider the extent of that damage to other people, even to that person as an individual, you might be nice to little Yanni, giving him the chocolate bars when he wants them. And then eventually, he's going to be instrumental in destroying his marriage, losing access to his children, losing half his accumulated wealth, or finding himself in such a violent altercation that it results in a criminal prosecution and the loss of his liberty for 5, 10 years or possibly longer, depending on opportunity. Do you see what I mean?
Or shorten life. I mean, either way, his or another's.
That's right. And so the question is this. Now let's imagine we don't accept and we don't reject the Christian proposition. Okay? We simply want to reason as objectively and fairly as possible. We don't consider that the human mind is the consequence of intelligent, sustained creation, or is the product of time and chance and behaviors that have tended towards survival of our particular species. We simultaneously accommodate the possibility of competing propositions being true. Okay? Now, if you look at how nature or time and chance or God in terms of his design of the human mind and body and the neurological system, how we are corrected, let's say by nature, what we see is a pattern of one piece of relatively ruthless, unpleasant infliction in order to achieve an advantageous outcome that we may benefit from for the rest of our life. I can give you an example. Imagine now you are in the kitchen with your mother as a child and you see a glowing red ring, which is quite fascinating. You know, it was black a moment ago, now it's kind of glowing and it's giving off heat. Your natural curiosity to learn about your environment might cause you to reach out and touch it. Has it changed its form? Has it become kind of soft? These are questions in your mind and you want to explore them. So you touch that ring. Now, of course, it's highly disadvantageous to have an unchecked habit of regularly touching extremely hot things, because that's going to damage your physiology in a long-term way that cannot be remedied.
That's why there's so many ladies in my past with damaged physiology. They wanted to touch a hot thing. Okay, that's beside the point. Sorry.
So what happens? Nature causes a ruthless injection of extreme physical pain.
It's disgusting of nature to do that.
Which looks like the opposite of compassion. Okay.
It's horrible, actually.
You would think.
Give you that amount of pain. Because have you touched anything hot?
I have. Ooh.
My word!
Yeah.
Dang.
I did something so stupid that I will never forget the stupidity of. I was in a chemistry class, and one of those metals on the right-hand side of the, what do you call it, the periodic table?
Yeah.
Somewhere over there. They react with air. So
those puppies that have to be submerged all the time.
Yeah, I think it was magnesium. I don't know if it was magnesium, sodium, some magnesium or sodium, something like that. In fact, no, phosphorus, I think. Yeah. Whatever it was, the chemists are probably going to be laughing at me, but it's something that normally or the chemist, normally.
Single. Our one viewer, there's a chance. If you're a chemist, don't laugh. Subscribe.
Yeah. Normally you keep it in oil or something.
Yeah. It has to be submerged in some sort of a fluid. Paraffin, I'm not sure.
It. And this was made available to us as students, so it wasn't theft. And so I took a little piece of it for later experimentation, because I was a diligent student, not in terms of actually studying books and passing exams, but in terms of trying to understand some of the interesting aspects of what we were taught. So I took it and I wrapped it up in something and I put it in my pocket, which was fine. But then when I went back to my boarding house in the evening, I opened it up. On my hand, I opened up the paper to have a look at it, which was utterly stupid. And it burst into flames. And a little part of it attached itself to my skin.
And that's stuff.
Flicking it off. And the burn was so deep and severe. I will never forget what that felt like. I had no relief for quite a few hours. And then for days afterwards, it was smarting and sensitive. Now, nature was extremely ruthless towards me. But if ever, for example, I'm conscripted and have to fight in a war zone where I know they're using willy peats, white phosphorus or something like that, I am going to exercise extreme caution.
Because that's they use it for flamethrowers, right?
The grenades.
Oh, is it grenades as well?
Horrible. Yeah.
I didn't even know about that.
So there are grenades known as willy peats.
Okay.
WP, as in white phosphorus. Fragmentation grenades. And obviously you pull the pin, you toss them towards the enemy.
And you duck.
And that thing fragments, and the little pieces of white phosphorus stick to the skin of your enemy and burn them. Now, of course, they don't kill them, but you take a number of people out of the game, if you like. And if they've got burns on their faces or something like that, they're going to have to be sent home. At least, hopefully not killed, but sent home in a lot of pain, unable possibly ever to serve again. So it's a very effective tool. But if I know, because I know the enemy could have white phosphorus, if I were conscripted, if I were in charge of, what do you call it, like a platoon, or a platoon commander or something in some war against the Russians, and I knew they could have white phosphorus, I'm going to be extremely circumspect with my men and with myself personally. And my carefulness as a consequence of learning, let's say this was phosphorus, the effect of a little piece of phosphorus on my skin is now going to cause me to act with highly effective type of compassion towards my men, to keep them out of harm's way so nobody gets their face burnt off with white phosphorus. Do you see what I mean? All because I had that painful inoculation against future stupidity. And that is the function of pain as nature intended it, or God's design intended it, depending on your choice of paradigm. And I don't think we are capable of learning to avoid stupidity without what I would regard as a psychological inoculation against stupid behaviors. And so when a parent sees a child doing something morally dangerous and destructive, or even physically, for them to then inflict pain on that child, forget about your worldview, forget about if you're Jewish or Christian or Hindu or whatever, or an atheist or an agnostic. I think the smart thing to do is to recognize the psychological benefits of an injection of pain that's going to log itself in the memory and associate itself with the wrong action for the rest of that person's life. Now, traditionally, that whether a person knows how they inherited that that convention, traditionally, if a child was naughty, defiant, disobedient, they would have a little injection of pain across their posterior that would traditionally leave a mark. Might leave a mark for a couple of days, like a little bruise. Okay. In this day and age, we say, oh, that's abuse. Children are unbeatable. What an evil thing to do. Whereas historically and logically, with respect to the design or evolution of the human body, a little injection of pain associated with a wrong choice is extremely effective in safeguarding against future repetition of that wrong choice in similar contexts. So I think the most compassionate thing to do is to psychologically inoculate a child against wrong actions. And I think 6,000 years of human history vindicates the superiority of the wisdom of that methodology, psychological methodology. That is a sophisticated psychological methodology, but one you don't have to understand. You only have to learn how to implement. And I think it's far more psychologically sophisticated than getting down on one knee, making eye contact with little Yanni and giving him a lecture that he may disagree with that lasts a few minutes. You see what I mean? So I think compassion is proven historically necessarily to integrate an aspect of conduct towards the recipient of that compassion that at the time may be extremely uncomfortable. That would be my view. And I sincerely believe I would have that view whether or not my thinking were contaminated by religious fundamentalism, or whether I had reasoned, effective means of intervening in a person's patterns of behavior from first principles, from observation of my environment, including other people in it. Whether it came that way or that way, I think the conclusion would be exactly the same. Yeah. I mean, look at modern society, where discipline is denied to youngsters. Are we producing a more contented, harder working, more joyful society or not? And 100 years ago, they didn't get everything right, by all means.
Nobody ever gets everything 100% right. That's the point. Even these oaks who claim moral superiority and claim they're experts in all of these psychological issues, they don't get it right.
It's ironic, isn't it? When you look at the lives of a lot of these, like that French guy, I don't want to say his name because if I get it wrong, it's actually a swear word in French. But I think it's something like Foucault.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Francis Foucault or something like that?
Maybe. But if you...
Was he an atheist or what was he?
I think so. But he was lecturing parents on how to treat their children from within the context of his psychiatric research. And in his spare time, he was raping little boys in, I think, cemeteries or something. Now,
that's not even an isolated incident. You look at some of these top names in psychology. These guys are sickos, man.
I know.
John Money, I think, is the other one that comes to mind.
But I'm just feeling extremely cautious because I know, although you can't defame a dead person legally in the United Kingdom, and their estate can't sue you for reputational damage to their legacy, nonetheless, I don't want to risk getting it wrong. So I just want to, so that I can quickly retract if I've said anything that's not accurate. Are you aware of a French psychologist or psychiatrist known as Foucault, who was alleged to have been involved in some very dubious personal behaviors? Okay, I just want to clarify that. But yeah, the point is, if you look at a lot of these people, they were giving advice often from a position that I believe was in rebellion to something similar to what we discussed in the past, was in rebellion against inherited conventions. Do you see? And that's what makes people fashionable. Do you know? It's like if you tell somebody the way you're doing things is right, don't change it. That's not as exciting as, the way you have learnt to do things from a young age is completely wrong. There's a new way of doing it, and you need to be at the cutting edge of human development.
Sounds like the Russians' fascination with Europe at one stage.
Okay, so actually, yes, you're almost certainly referring to Michel Foucault. So we got the name right.
Michel Foucault.
Yeah. Died in 1984. And the allegations. Okay, so following a 2021 book by French writer Guy Sormand, allegations resurfaced that Foucault engaged in sexual activity with minors during visits to Tunisia in the late 1960s. He claimed Foucault sought out young boys in impoverished areas and that this was known locally. But again, the allegations emerged decades after Foucault's death. He can't respond to the claims, obviously, because he's dead. So I don't want to say he definitely did this. I just want to say...
But again, there are other examples. John Money comes to mind. There are other people who come to mind as well. So we're broken people, right?
Yeah.
We're broken people. All of us are broken. But it seems like there's a group of people who think that they have superior knowledge because of some or other new thing. Just because it's nouveau, it's obviously superior.
Yeah.
Which is nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, if you just take 5 minutes to think about the whole thing, humanity has survived for a very long time, doing things in the same way for a very long time. And in very recent years, we have tried to divorce ourselves as far as humanly possible from so many of those cultures and conventions and protocols and procedures. And the result, when you look at society, is the opposite of cohesiveness and an increase in happiness. I don't think many people would really feel like they had grounds to refute that assertion. So to conclude from my perspective, compassion involves discipline. What is discipline? Discipline is the state of a person being compelled by one means or another to do the thing which is advantageous, whether or not they feel like doing it at the time. And if you do feel like doing it, it's hard to really define that as discipline. So I suppose we could even say being compelled to do something you don't really want to do, that doesn't feel good, because it's the right thing to do. And that is discipline. And so all achievement that fits the definition of what an achievement is requires, in my opinion, discipline. It requires that state of having to do things you don't feel like doing, you don't want to do, but they're the right thing to do. And they're a necessary part of the process of getting what you want that you don't already have. And in child rearing, I think that's equally true. So compassion involves discipline. Discipline is unwelcome, unpleasant.
Well, thank you very much, John, for your time. I want to conclude by saying, gee vir Jannie 'n hengse pak swaar. Trek sy gatvelle af. That's what we say in Afrikaans.
I think
Trek sy gatvelle af. Gee vir Jannie 'n pak slaag.
I think what you're saying
Moenie vir hom die chocolate gee nie.
is don't give Yanni that chocolate. Give him a good old slap.
Hard.
Yeah, yeah,
Hengse pak slaag.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, without discipline, there's not going to be joy. There's not going to be joy for others. You might derive joy from hurting other people. But
And I know we're trying to conclude, but I just didn't want to kind of miss out an aspect of this discussion that I sensed that you thought could be quite important to just touch on. And that is like, what about when...
our viewer won't mind.
No.
Our single viewer.
What about when we're trying to help people that are not under our aegis? You know, so they're not like an employee that we're responsible for the performance of within a work context. They're not our child. They're not like a junior rank under the command of an officer or something like that in a military context. They're just another person that you happen to know for one reason or another, that you can see things are not going well in their life and you feel compassion towards them. You feel like you want to improve their circumstances in some way. I don't know if I sensed correctly that you had wanted to touch on that. Yeah. So can I ask, what is your view? You could just invent a scenario and then tell me the opposing positions on it.
So in other words, a brother in sin almost, or a brother struggling.
Yeah.
Any. Yeah. It's complex because you bring in the dynamics of other people. I think sometimes a guy needs a slap. I mean, I've told people before, listen, if I'm out of line, you've got to have to deal with me harshly sometimes. And I'm not joking about. I literally think in some ways I'm on the spectrum. I tell this to people as a joke, but I honestly believe in some ways I am on the spectrum. And so social interactions for me are sometimes odd and strange. And sometimes compassion in my case is taking me aside, and my pastor's done that. He's told me a few times in life. He said he'd take me aside and say, "Listen, the way you spoke to that guy wasn't right. You're gonna have to." Yeah. And I accept it. I appreciate it. So because it gives me the opportunity to make right and to apologize and ask forgiveness if necessary, and grow. Because in that there's growth, I think. So. When it comes to compassion for other people, say there's a dude that's down and out. Say there's a dude that's down and out that comes to our church, right? And he thinks he requires some things from the church members, right? He's not necessarily a member, but he maybe even comes regularly. What's the compassionate thing to do? Just give him whatever he wants because you're a Christian. Just allow him to approach anybody in the church, old ladies who are susceptible to being abused, which actually the apostle speaks of. Paul speaks of that. So is that the compassionate thing to do? Just give him whatever he wants. If he needs a car, give him a car. If he needs a house or if he needs a room and board, just give it to him, I mean, that's compassion. That's a form of compassion.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But now what about the other people?
Yeah. And I think it's a very good example of where things go if compassion doesn't involve
discipline,
aspects of interaction that are unpleasant to the recipient of the compassion. Because you've got to ask yourself the question, and you don't want to do it in a judgmental or presumptuous way, but you've got to ask yourself the question, if the person is down and out, and we could all be down and out,
I've been down and out.
Yeah. Something could happen to us entirely outside our control that put us into really bad circumstances. Okay. But it's defective always to reason on the basis of a likelihood of an exception in a person's life rather than an identified rule. Okay, now that's not judgmental. It's a little bit like profiling. You know, if you are operating airport security and you see people who your instincts tell you are extremely unlikely to be involved in drug smuggling or terrorism, you know. Now, of course, there are exceptions. You could have a mother and nicely dressed children who are very obedient, like reading books while they're waiting for their plane. And yeah, that book could be carved out and have drugs in it. The mother could not really be pregnant. She could have a whole bunch of drugs. Of course, there are always exceptions. But when you see those people, as opposed to people with large mammary glands that clearly didn't grow organically, and all these other kinds of things, covered in makeup, traveling on their own with fake Gucci bags and whatever, it is entirely sensible that you will ask that lady to please step aside and you'll be a little bit more careful in going through her bags. If as an airport security officer, you said, no, we are not going to profile because that is bigoted. So we are going to ask the pregnant mother with her apparently very respectful children to go over there and be strip searched. You wouldn't be very good at your job. Do you see what I mean? And when you do it, when you bring that lady off to one side and do whatever you need to do to make sure she's not smuggling drugs, of course you do it in a respectful way, knowing that she could be entirely innocent, do you know? And I think when we are dealing with people who are in bad circumstances, I don't think there's anything judgmental or disrespectful about considering the likelihood that the reason that this person is down and out may be, at least partly, as a consequence of bad decisions that they've made. And so that person, having had the freedom to exercise personal autonomy, has ended up in circumstances that now requires your help. And so if then you tell that person, look, frankly, privately, no one's listening, I'm not being disrespectful, but you've made some decisions that have contributed to your being in this situation. And they'll often acknowledge, they'll often say whatever they need to say to move their case forward with you. So I'll say, oh yeah, I've made mistakes. It's okay. But do you acknowledge that it's not necessarily advantageous to you, obviously speaking on their level in the way that they would understand, it's not necessarily advantageous to you to be given the same level of autonomy that you've enjoyed in the past, albeit with access to resources that you did not acquire by virtue of the decision, by operation of the decision-making apparatus that you have habitually employed to put you in this situation. Do you see what I mean? Now, I'm saying this to you. Obviously, you wouldn't talk to them in that way, but I'm trying to save words. In a nutshell, what you're essentially saying is this person's made bad decisions and that's put them in a bad situation. If a person makes bad decisions with 10, you don't want to give them 1,000 because you're just going to leverage the badness of the outcomes by 100 times. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that they now need help, they're in a situation where you actually have to intervene in their life, is arguably likely evidence, of course there are exceptions, that they need help with how they make their decisions, even as it affects them personally, which might feel invasive or disrespectful, but it's a simple reality. It's a statistical likelihood. And so by then saying to them, oh yeah, whatever you need, do you need a loan? Do you need money? Do you need free this, free that? You're basically just giving them more of what they've had in the past that they use to put themselves in bad circumstances. So if the person has used their money to make themselves into an alcoholic or a drug addict, and they haven't short-circuited that decision-making apparatus, and you give them more money, you're going to help them become more of an alcoholic or more of a drug addict. And so the net effect of your compassion is going to be to worsen their circumstances. So now, so you need to treat them in a way that contradicts their will, because their will has already proven to lead into circumstances where they now need your help. And if you fuel that, they're going to need more of your help, and they're going to need more help from other people as well, beyond what you yourself can supply. So there necessarily needs to be, speaking statistically on the basis of averages, there likely needs to be contradiction of their will during the process of exercising effective compassion that has positive outcome. And you'll often find this when you help people in bad circumstances. Initially, they'll be grateful, but at some point, when they realize their will is being crossed, they'll become resentful and they'll badmouth you. So you're taking advantage of them or abusing them or being disrespectful or rude or whatever. And you will find, I believe you will find, because I've been involved in this kind of thing more than a couple of times, and I would say in about 80 or 90% of cases, that will be the effect, that you will have tried to help the person, you will have demonstrably helped them. 10 juries would all concur unanimously that what you have done for that person has been genuinely compassionate and helpful.
Jury of peers?
Yes. Well, if they're your peers, yes. If they're peers of the person that you are helping, they will probably all say that you've been rude to the guy and wow, you've imposed your will and you've taken advantage and maybe you're just a control freak or something like that. You're doing it for all the wrong reasons just to look good or whatever kind of nonsense they come up with. But a jury of peers of a person that genuinely wants to help and exercise effective, constructive compassion would all agree that what you've done is genuinely helpful, or at least was intended to be genuinely helpful up to a certain point. But logically, the nature of helping somebody who is in bad circumstances as a consequence of a faulty decision-making apparatus is such that once you equip them to make more of their own personal decisions, you may actually be instrumental in exacerbating the damage they do to themselves. Do you see? So the help you give, of course, has to be in some ways undilutedly compassionate, in the sense that even a psychologically uneducated person would concur was helpful, like literally giving them bread and soup and a place to sleep for a couple of nights or something like that.
What type of bread and soup is this? Is it at least ciabatta?
Oh yes.
Sourdough?
Well, yeah.
Can it be creamy tomato soup?
As long as it doesn't have added sugar, yeah. And it should really be organic tomato soup. And you don't want too much kind of carbohydrate in that bread.
Because that's not compassion either.
Well, yeah, because you're damaging that person's physiology.
Yeah.
But again, I'm being facetious. So let's imagine a person comes to you and they're in really bad circumstances. I can give you an example. Somebody came to me as an alcoholic and they were not eating any food whatsoever. They were drinking a bottle of Lucozade, which is an energy drink in the UK.
Oh yeah, you get it here.
Oh, okay, didn't realise that. And they were consuming, on average, 3/4 of a litre of vodka every day. And I calculated the calories, because alcohol's got a lot of calories, and so does Lucozade. They were ingesting 3,000 calories a day, and yet their body weight was, I'm going to guess, about 56 kilograms, male, about 5'10". And the person used to hate me because I have always been a kind of a bigoted, narrow-minded Christian. But the person couldn't get help anywhere else. They went to their nice people who tried to help them, but then gave up on them because they couldn't help this person become not an alcoholic. So the person came to me because they were desperate and they had no one else to help. And they didn't have any money. Their clothes were like a mess and whatever. Had broken ribs from, I think, getting drunk and falling down some stairs or something like that. Maybe that was the official story. They may have been beaten up by their better half, a female, it was quite large. But whatever the circumstances were, turned up with broken ribs.
It's my kind of woman.
Absolutely no food and unable to sleep. Because if you're taking in 3,000 calories, you can't fit any food into a 56 kilogram body, and you've got far too much energy to sleep. So when I say we're not sleeping, yeah, I'm sure they slept a couple of hours of bad sleep. But the point is, they were in a really bad situation, and none of their nice people, their nice kind of compassionate people, were willing to help them.
You say they. Was this one of those gender queer type?
No, it's actually quite conventional in that sense. Very kind of.
Right. No, just checking.
Very heterosexual. Yeah.
Okay.
White heterosexual male.
So, in other words, a disgusting individual, just by virtue of him being white and cisgender.
I suppose so. But anyway, so I asked.
So that's what we are.
How can I help you? And basically, to cut a long story short, the guy was an incurable alcoholic, as the situation was when he was exercising his own autonomy. So he was essentially coming to me to voluntarily relinquish his autonomy. That's what he was coming for. And so what I did was I got all the information I needed, like how much alcohol are you having? That's what I found out. It's about 750 mils of vodka a day. And so this was before the days of AI, so I didn't really know how to get good information. I knew I couldn't go to the medical industry because they would then just victimize him. In other words, turn him into a victim. And they wouldn't approve of anything that I did to help him. They'd put him on an alternative drug, which would only last so long, then he'd be back on the alcohol. I knew this because he'd already gone through that route and it had failed. And so I just reasoned, well, it's reasonable to reduce his intake by 10% a day. Now, maybe medical people would be horrified by that and think I'm so evil. But
Well, we only have one viewer, so it's okay.
Yeah, the medical person.
Well, if it's a medical... This person...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's a chemist. Yeah. Oh, might be a chemist.
And so...
And mom.
Yeah.
Hi, mom.
And so literally what I did was I divided up his alcohol consumption into, I think it was like 22 increments. And so I then got my weighing scale, I got the shot glass, and I poured in that many grams of alcohol, and I kept the vodka. So I may have been working at my desk and kept the vodka bottle like on my desk or in a little place where he couldn't get it. And he'd have to come to me every hour, and like clockwork, he came bang on the hour and he asked for his alcohol. And so I'd measure out the 9 grams or whatever it was. Well, it started off more than that, obviously, and give it to him, and he'd take it. Oh, thank you. It'd go away. An hour later, he'd come back, and I'd measure out and give it to him. At night, I couldn't really be bothered to wake up every single hour on the hour. So I said, listen, every 2 hours in the middle of the night. So he'd wake me up every 2 hours in the middle of the night. I actually set an alarm as well. But normally he was there just before the alarm went off. He was actually a nice guy, a considerate guy as well. He would be horrified that he's imposing on me in this way. But I told him, no, we all, we could all end up in a situation like this. Don't worry about it. And so every 2 hours, I'd mete out like a double portion, and then he'd be fine for 2 hours, and then come back again. After, I can't remember how long it was, I had it all in an Excel table. It's probably somewhere in the cloud now. But after maybe 3 or 4 weeks, he was down to, I think, 30 grams of vodka a day from 750. During that time, I'd read somewhere, we did have the internet, that he could fit. So he was in the house all the time, and I asked other people in the house just keep an eye on him. And on only one occasion he fitted, lying on the ground. It was part of the withdrawal process. He was lying on the ground, just like fitting like that, but I just held his body and made sure he didn't bite his tongue or anything like that. And that just lasted a few minutes. That was it. It only happened once. But yeah, he came off the alcohol. Now, how did that happen? By me contradicting his will. Because he wanted more. He thought, he wasn't content to just have that. He thought he could do it his way. And the crazy thing was, as he became more compos mentis, because to begin with, he was like constantly drunk, could barely string a sentence together. And the guy was an intelligent guy. I say was because sadly he subsequently died in a boating accident while actually being under the influence, do you see? So it didn't last. He went on to the 30 grams a day because he said he never wants to be teetotal. Because he looked at all these teetotalers and thought they were like religious fundamental nutcases, following their 12 steps, I think it is, and giving their little speeches. And he was very disparaging of that. So he deliberately didn't want to be teetotal. He wanted to just have a shot now and then just for recreation. But then he had never acquired the coping mechanisms, because although they came from a nice family, that family didn't believe in discipline. It didn't believe in contradiction of the will by force, do you see? And so he used
Were they surprised to see the turn out of their son?
Because they thought that I was a really nasty piece of work.
What I mean is, when things went south in his life, obviously...
I see what you mean. Sorry.
I just need to qualify. We are Christians. We believe that things can go south or north. I don't know how you believe in bad if you don't believe in good, and what is your source of good and bad if you're not a Christian. I'm just saying I understand life to be made up of good and bad. Things are good or bad, and I have a basis for that. So when their son went bad, like a rotten apple, could they make the connections?
The thing is, one doesn't go bad overnight. It's a kind of progression, isn't it?
Yes, so just like an apple doesn't necessarily just it's fraught.
Yeah,
it kind of it's like a progression. Yeah.
So even as a youngster, I gather he used to smash up his room, and have tantrums when he didn't get his own way. Yeah.
Daai Jannie se gatvelle moes al lankal afgetrek gewees het. That's what I would say.
And the thing is, he was such a nice guy, such a reasonable. He was courteous. He was respectful. He'd know how to behave in company, that kind of thing. And but the problem is, his will was never crossed as a child, and that is the problem with modern people. They don't have their wills crossed. Yeah,
this fits in nicely with the other talk we had about discipline, right? I mean. If you want freedom in one sense, you need to be bound in another. You're always bound.
Yeah.
So if a guy is not going to be bound by rules that are inflicted upon him almost, then he's going to have the freedom to smash up his room.
Yeah.
He's going to be free to not have consequences.
Yeah.
Consequently, he's going to smash up his room.
Yeah. And then never.
Wow, that's that's a revelation.
And then take his neighbor, who's made to practice the piano by the parents for like 2 hours a day, extremely rigorously disciplined to do what they really don't want to do. They want to be going out with their friends to parties and things, rather than preparing for their next ABRSM grading or something like that. Yeah, and yet then for the rest of their life, they can compose music extemporaneously. They've got all the freedom of those 88 keys to do whatever is humanly conceivable to do, and all the joy that produces. as a consequence of that harsh discipline when they were young. And this is the thing, that freedom is directly correlated to discipline.
Yeah, in a sense, you can say the piano player's mother didn't have much compassion for his want to not play.
That's true.
I remember there's a band called 21 Pilots.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a American pop band. But they got some catchy tunes, young lighties. They've been in the business for a few years now. I remember watching a mini documentary. These folks are typical pop stars on stage. The lead singer dresses weird and stuff. But in real life, he's just this dead normal kid. Such a nice guy. And what struck me was he's a very disciplined young man. And I think he's a Christian, actually. It's not necessarily a Christian band, but I think he's a Christian.
Yeah.
But he said in an interview, he said his mother made him practice basketball for an X amount of time every day. He was already, it seems, a pop star. I mean, the guy could go your own way, but he didn't. He's disciplined. His mom wants him to practice, build up some discipline. I thought that was pretty cool. You know, a young lighty who has the world at his feet, and yet they choose a path of discipline. He's not going to become an NBA star, but his mother obviously saw something in his upbringing in doing sport, and
it
practicing.
It always kind of reaps rewards in the future. I can remember from like the age of, I think I was 7 years old, and I had a little Belgian friend who was kind of an orphan, I think.
Was the child that size?
When he was in his mother's womb, he was the size.
But
at some
when
point,
you met him, he was slightly taller. Not like a little Belgian chocolate dwarf.
Yeah, that's how big his feet were when I knew him. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and this little Belgian child was brought up by his grandmother, who was very strict from what I could work out. And sometimes it's the benefit of being brought up by somebody of a superior generation, because there's that level of strictness that we progressively lose with each generation, generally speaking, unless there's a kind of a reaction to address too much licensed, and
which is probably inevitable.
Yeah,
that's how that's how it works in life. The ups and downs. Yeah.
And this little boy was, kind of like quite strictly. His grandmother was like a bit kind of severe and fierce. I remember she was very fierce towards me because I kind of threw a stone at this boy. We were playing, and it was the fastest total change of emotion I've ever experienced in my life. He was running along, and I took a stone and I threw it at him because we were playing like cowboys and Indians at the age of 7. No intention whatsoever to hurt him, but I took a big stone and I threw it while he was running, and as he was running, I hit him on the side of the temple with quite a large stone, and he went down like a sack of potatoes instantly. And I thought, hooray! For like a split second, I'd got him. And then instantly, what have I done? Do you know? And so his grandmother was really upset with me for doing that. It's very uncharacteristic of me to want to hurt him. I didn't want to hurt him. But anyway, it kind of really made me think about this boy. I've never forgotten him because I felt so bad about what I'd done after feeling so jubilant about what I'd achieved.
So I guess this is the right time to say, if you're a Belgian boy out there and you're still in a coma from a stone.
No, he's not. No, I know he's not, because he came across my radar. I don't know how. As an adult.
Oh, does he still have the big...
I don't think so.
Swollen...
But I always remember this little boy because my mother...
Did you make peace with the guy?
Oh, yeah. Because
This is distressing to me, this type of thing. I feel like I need a safe space.
See, my mother was quite hardcore. She was quite a disciplinarian, but as you know, extremely kind.
She is the loveliness herself.
Yeah. But you wouldn't believe... I mean, she's really the epitome of effective compassion, because she was so severe. when we were young, and yet you know what she's like. So when we went to school, all these other little South African children, because I was in South Africa when I was at primary school age. I don't know whether we call it that. And so every other child used to go to school with food, but not me. She thought it was really soft, really wussy to have food. You have your breakfast before school. Come home and eat food. Why do you need to take food to school? Because
what a sissy.
You finish school in South Africa at what, like 1 o'clock or something when you're 7 years old?
10 to, probably 1 o'clock.
So why do you need food?
Yeah.
So anyway, but all the others had food. And so this little boy felt sorry for me because I didn't have any food. So he used to give me his sandwiches with me.
Belgian, you chucked the stone at.
Yes,
Oh,
that's right.
Word.
And
you can't, these British just want to kill everyone.
yeah. And his sandwiches were literally just bread with tomato sauce on. Okay, which is bizarre. But anyway.
That's probably why it was so, he was so generous.
But anyway, so from that like really severe, not apparently visibly compassionate upbringing, he then went on to have a wonderfully successful life. And then he came across my path because I noticed he'd become like the lead singer of a band in South Africa called the Parlotones.
Oh, you're kidding me?
Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know him personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were very successful. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so
I've forgotten his name now.
Khan Morby.
There we go. That's the one.
I never forgot him because of his kindness to me with the sandwiches and my unkindness to him with smashing him inside of it with a big stone.
I think it might have released something in his brain to just kind of work these vocal cords.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Back then we were in standards.
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's because we had standards. These days they are in grades because things have degraded. Yeah. That's what I say.
Very good. Very good. But the point I'm making is severe little upbringing, with a severe grandmother. And then, but he's compassionate towards me. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
That severe treatment of the grandmother didn't turn him into a little psychopath who wanted to be unkind to me. It made him be compassionate towards me, give me food that my mother thought I didn't really need, that's a bit soft, and made him disciplined to go on in life and pass all those obstacles you need to. And if someone says, I want to start like a successful rock band in a country like South Africa, then the chances of that are extremely small. You have to overcome a lot of obstacles en route to achieving something like that. Yeah. But he had the kind of discipline to do it. And it's interesting, I cite him as an example because I knew him when he was very young, and then he came across my path when he's old. I didn't see all that time in between. But I was just thinking of that when we were talking about the one who's forced to practice 2 hours a day and then can, be an absolute master of that piano. So again, always, 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 genuine compassion, in my view, necessarily involves requiring the recipient of that compassion to experience something unpleasant, unwanted, unwelcome. And I know we're supposed to be concluding, but I think it would be remiss not to relate this to people's often wrong comprehension about the nature of God. I've heard people say, I don't believe in God. I would never believe in a God who allows so much suffering.
Pain and destruction and
so
suffering.
In the world.
I hear that a lot. It's one of the anthems of atheism.
Yes. And yet I think we've just proven to a reasonable mind that our good requires suffering.
And not just that. I mean, the elephant in the room for me is if you don't believe in a God, you define good and bad. Why is it a problem to you? If everything is just primordial soup that's evolved into whatever, we go back to my atoms are just acting in a different way than your atoms, and therefore what's the problem? right? So good and bad, you cannot bring that into the argument.
Yeah.
You cannot bring discipline into the argument. You cannot bring compassion into the argument. Compassion should be a foreign thing to you. If I were you, I'd be an honest atheist and go out and shoot people and kill people and rape and pillage and kharmal.
Yeah.
I think these. I think our compassionate God, even from the Old Testament, Isaiah, even Exodus, he says that to what's that his name? Moses.
Yeah.
Kind of important guy.
Yes.
Can't forget his name. So no. God has to be compassionate.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd be in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Deep trouble.
Yeah.
As we deserve.
Yes.
So
Yeah. So I know the atheists will kind of make fun of how quickly we dispense with their objection, but
I'm used to that.
I think even if we pursued it to its absolute logical conclusion, I don't think my feelings about their arguments would really change. So they'll go quite far and they'll say, okay, so I know that parents might lose a child to some disease, and then yes, you could argue that that child was going to die anyway, and that the parents became better people as a consequence of that loss and went on to start a charity that benefited 1,000 children. Okay, yeah, I accept that. But then they say, but what about like a wounded animal who just happens to be running along and break its leg and lie there and die of starvation and something like that, without there ever being evidence. Now, this is a very interesting thing. I remember as a child being asked if a tree fell
in a forest where nobody can hear it, doesn't make a sound.
Yes, yeah. And I suppose the answer is if nobody can hear it, it doesn't. Because all of that compaction of the air only becomes a sound at the point at which that movement of air is intersected by a receiver, such as the tympanic membrane of someone's ear, someone or something's ear, or whatever is a physical equivalent that produces that vibration. So you could say it never does. Now, anything that we find out about that proves that there is senseless suffering, the fact that we find out about it makes the suffering not senseless. Do you see what I mean? Because we are recipients of that information. This morning, I did something really stupid. I went to the kitchen.
You let me into the house. Oh.
Well, no, that's transpired not to be so stupid, because it was a necessary event in a chain of events that has produced what I've found to be quite a scintillating conversation. But I found
and hopefully will end in another cup of coffee.
Yeah. So it's like mutual benefit. I get a bit of mental stimulation, and you get a bit of coffee. It's quid pro quo. But anyway,
we need a sponsor. We need a coffee sponsor. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Maybe when we get 10 viewers, we can approach some coffee companies.
Come on, guys. Just 9 more. Just 9. Okay.
I'm going to have to come out with it. I dismembered an animal's tail this morning.
What?
Yeah.
And you don't even feel bad about it?
I do. I felt bitterly sorry about it.
What animal?
I was trying. Here's the thing. I was trying to be compassionate to a little animal. It was a gecko.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
With their big innocent eyes and no intention to hurt anyone. It was stuck in my sink, and the walls were too steep and slippery for it to get out.
Very interesting. They seem to stick to anything. Yeah.
Yeah, not a very clean, because we keep our sink very clean, you see.
Yeah, you need to probably be more dirty.
A bit of dirt on one side, yeah. And so there was a little gecko stuck in my sink, and I was trying to help him out. But when I touched him, he thought I was threatening him and kept running around inside my sink, and I couldn't. So I tried to get a little bit of paper and get him to crawl onto it, but he ran off the paper like it was some threat. So in the end, I got a bit of polystyrene packaging out of the bin and managed to get him just to overlap it slightly, and I flicked him onto the side. And then on the side, I wanted him to not come back to the sink. I wanted him to be flicked towards the door. Now, I know they can drop a long distance and not hurt themselves. So I tried to flick him with the polystyrene, whatever it was, little plate, towards the door. And incredibly stupidly, there was too much friction that when I moved across the work surface, the polystyrene went above his tail, and as I pushed, it disconnected his tail using that friction from the rest of his body. There was a little bleeding stump. And that was incredibly sad that I'd done that when I'm trying to help him. And
you're a geckist.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a metaphor for how we can damage other people, whether they're our children or people properly under our charge, by trying to be kind to them rather than allowing them to go through a natural process of suffering. If we try and alleviate suffering and remove risk, we can do an awful lot of damage to them. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And so it reminded me, what did that remind us of, what we were talking about when we started talking about this?
Misplaced compassion.
Yeah, there was an event. Oh yeah, we were talking about the animal lying on this, having its leg trapped in something, and just lying there in the middle of nowhere and just starving to death. Okay. And this is what the atheist says. The atheist says, okay, so yes, let's not talk about your dead child, because I can see that sadness may have caused you to create a charity that benefits 1,000 people, and so the net effect is thoroughly positive. Okay, I won't even go there, but I could beat you in that argument anyway, but my hearers are too stupid to acknowledge my argument as being superior to yours, so I'm not even going to touch that. But let's deal with a deer who traps its leg in the forest. It's lying there, poor little deer, starving to death. Where's the good in that? Okay, the question is, has such a thing ever happened? Well, of course it must have happened. But if it must have happened and you knew about it, or if it's a conceptual phenomenon that is actually technically possible, that you're capable of reasoning, the benefit of that is the fact that we're already discussing it, and you are motivated to alleviate suffering. Any suffering of anyone that invokes in you a sense of compassion to do good has already achieved its objective. The fact that I know there's a possibility that there could be deers lying in the middle of nowhere with their legs trapped in something, starving to death, makes me...
Oh, that's not the point.
Makes me want humans to be more observant and careful stewards of the resources that we're supposed to be responsible for as husbandmen. Do you see what I mean? So the knowledge that such a thing can happen...
Just to clarify, there's no such thing as a wifeman.
No.
Only husband.
Yeah.
There's husbandry, not wifery.
Yeah.
Just put it.
Yeah.
What we don't believe in.
No.
Although some groups might say we're being sexist and therefore you will get wifemen. But okay, that's beside the point.
Yes.
Yes, I get what you say.
Yeah. So there is, it is, the moment you begin to discuss it, you've already destroyed your own argument.
But
the only way you could win the argument is by not discussing it.
Yeah.
Then the suffering becomes
provided
senseless.
that even matters from your point of view. Why does it even...
Yeah.
We can't go there now, but why does it even matter?
The thing is, you only have to find one benefit from allegedly arbitrary, senseless suffering that is capable of counteracting the negative moral effect of any number of acts of suffering. And you've already satisfied the requirements to defeat that argument. Do you see what I mean? So the moment it's discussed, you've lost the argument, logically. So there is no suffering that we can envisage, we can conceptualize, become aware of, that could not and historically does not ultimately result in good. Do you see what I mean? And I would find it enjoyable to challenge you to come up with an example. And even if I come up with the most convoluted riposte, as long as it is conceptually practicable, the argument's in my favour. Do you see what I mean? So so really, I don't want to get too convoluted, but at the end of this whole conversation, we have a situation where the evidence is necessarily incontrovertible that suffering per se is good. Okay, now, I say per se, I don't want somebody to hijack me, kidnap me, dismember my limbs, do really unpleasant things to me and say, but you said suffering is good. Because I will still acknowledge that even if they did that to me, good would probably result at my initial short-term expense, but that for me, ultimately, good would result anyway. And that for humanity, when they found out who were the perpetrators of this wrong act, if they found out about it, the action that would result as a consequence of people's horror of the wrongdoing would produce a negative, positive effect. Like, for example, with Trump, identifying the reality of persecution of certain people in this country. Their persecution, the bad things that happen in their life were necessary in order to attract the attention of an administration that exercises national compassion to alleviate the suffering of a whole population. Do you see what I mean? And even, sorry.
No, I want to take it even further. It's not just good for the minorities. The ANC is a cancer, right? Let's be honest here, all right? So we have to respect the government. God puts government in place. But we also see in the scriptures that you get bad governance. You got good kings, bad kings, okay?
Yeah.
The Bible didn't say all kings were good, all right?
It's like 50-50 throughout the Old Testament.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can never remember which, because it's not a predictable order.
Yeah.
A good king produces a bad child king.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was quite shocking. You'd get an exceptional king who produces an exceptionally evil son. And so we can safely say the ANC they're terrible. All right, they literally, I think, the epitome of a terrible government. Okay, they're doing everything. They're siding with evil governments. It's shocking, right? And so what their own followers might not realize is Trump's intervention, however bad it looks, might be even good for them.
Yes, yeah.
You see, this is the extent of goodness and
discipline,
proper compassion, right? It might even be good for. They might not realize or acknowledge it.
Yes,
right? But that's the end of it. There might come some good if we can remove the ANC, whom most people who are not on the receiving, on their good in their good books. Most people can agree that this is a terrible party. They're really ruining things for everyone. Then that's, good comes from their perspective. It's an evil thing. So but it's not evil. The outcome may be very positive for South Africa.
Yeah, and it may even be good for the individuals involved in perpetrating the wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. See, I'm not very well educated with politics in South Africa. Okay. I don't know any individuals' names, even apart from maybe the head of immigration. I think he left. Steenhuisen or something like that.
John Steenhuisen.
Yeah.
DA.
Yeah. And Mr. Ramaphosa is the
president.
Yeah, that's right. But what is obvious is that the current government in this country likes crime. And that's very clear.
They love it. Yeah.
And so if the individuals who are involved in perpetuating crime, and this might sound really strange to people who haven't spent time in South Africa, that a government can actually like crime. But it's a very straightforward matter to address crime. All you have to do is just copy the legislation that has effect in countries where they have a grip of crime, and just put your South African stamp on that. So, for example, a reasonable expectation of self-defense if someone breaks into your house in the middle of the night. In the overwhelming majority of jurisdictions throughout the world, it is justifiable to assume that if somebody enters your house in the middle of the night, they have the capability and potentially the intention, if they're discovered, to do harm to you that likely can result in your death. And so it is justifiable to terminate their life in those circumstances. Whereas here, the immediate assumption is that you've used excessive force and you need to be charged with attempted murder or murder, depending on the outcome. You should have
had more compassion on the guy who would have had no compassion on you or your family.
Well, yes, because maybe he's simply addressing an historic wrong. Do you see? So a government that disincentivizes a course of behavior that has a logically demonstrable net effect of reducing violent crime can only like violent crime. That there is no other logical way of looking at that. And so if you are part of an entity that perpetuates a course of behavior amongst criminals in your country that tends towards increasing violence, which is the effect of violence, because violence begets more violence. Obviously, one person does something violent to another person, that person retaliates. If I'm a gangster and I kill you, it doesn't end there. The people who are associated with you now see my perceived dominance of the member of your gang as dangerous to their survival or well-being. So now they've got to escalate. They've got to get other people to come and kill me. And so now my gang has to come and kill those perpetrators and so on. So the thing about violence is if it's unchecked, it doesn't just continue linearly. It has a cumulative growth curve. And so if people are involved in perpetuating, you can't even call it a cycle of violence, but let's say the mushroom cloud explosion of violence, which is what you have in this country, then they are not being helped by their own actions. So it's a little bit like a political tantrum, you know. So they didn't get their own way about something in the past. I'm not sufficiently well educated about South African politics to know exactly what, but they didn't get their own way. They had a little spiteful tantrum. It has a consequence which is initially intended to affect other people, but will eventually get out of control and end up affecting them. And they may be driving home from their, from Parliament or whatever, and they get hijacked, or their daughter gets raped and killed or something like that. So the very people that and a foreign intervention would be aiming to target ultimately will be helped by having their will contradicted if the autonomous exercise of that will is tending towards generally destructive outcomes, which is exactly the same thing as a child, Jannie, having a tantrum in Checkers because mummy doesn't give him a bar one. Do you see? At whatever scale you want to look at it, the principle holds true. Therefore, compassion sometimes involves extremely aggressive, ruthless acts that are proportionate to the level of destructiveness in the behavior that is being corrected by the act of compassion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I would kind of quod erat demonstrandum, my whole case, really.
Yeah, I'm not into quads. They're very dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can be erratic.
Yeah. So, you know what I forgot about?
No.
We're going to need a thumbnail.
Oh, okay.
What type of thumbnail is going to suit this sort of video? What type of face would suit this?
I think kind of like a this face.
What about?
Yeah. Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
But what is that actually? I'm not.
Sort of a, oh, sure.
Oh, I see. I see what you mean. But the eyebrows were wrong for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure Brad will find something of use there. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
That now really brings us to.
I think it does. I think we've quite comprehensively covered the whole thing.
Solved the whole world's problems again.
No one ever needs to have a conversation about this.
I don't know. I don't know why even the other podcasts exist. To be honest, I don't know why. I don't know why there are presidents in this world. Just if people listen to this podcast, everybody. All I am saying is give Brit and Boer a chance. I think that's the original. That's the original.
I actually have no idea what you're singing about.
They changed it to all we are saying is give love a chance.
I still don't know.
I just took it back. You don't know that?
No. The only thing is all I'm saying I know is all I want to say is that they don't really care about us.
Yeah, I happen to like that song. What's the other one? What's the Beatles one about love? All we need is Brit and Boer. All we need is Brit and Boer. That's the original. That's the original.
Yeah.
So many songs were actually stolen and changed. It was written about us. All I'm really saying, it was written about us. Yeah. Right, thank you very much. Tune in next time to Brit and Boer.
And now I'm going to see if I can terminate the recording by pressing this button here.
Imagine you terminate the whole thing.